This is the World Report of The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, April 2015. Coming up, it's a floating piece of world history, and the honor and gratitude presented to these two leaders for preserving her goes out to so many more. We'll tell you how this shining example to save a treasure just keeps sailing on. Sometimes the Christmas concert is so filled with wonder and laughter, even the marquee stars who come to entertain don't want to miss one moment of the magic.
I want to see what I want to watch it.
Plus, the stark beauty of the American Southwest combined with the finished work of another temple newly completed. And before the year is through, the Western Hemisphere will add 4 more. We'll take you to each one, so very close to their day of dedication. And he's got a culinary dish for just about every kind of taste. Now he's tackling nutrition for a little show and tell. Only this time, the lesson is for those who may never have really understood it until they were called to serve.
But first, an apostle's invitation to speak inside the Vatican.
The evidence I offer is personal, very personal.
In the heart of Rome, with the joint participation of Pope Francis and speaking before a body of some of the most respected religious leaders and thinkers of our day, Henry B. Eyring of the First Presidency distilled his discussion on marriage at the Vatican summit to a simple truth in his own life, that his 52-year marriage to wife Kathleen and their family of 6 children began with the hope of the single man he happened to be when he first met her.
If I could only be with her, I could become every good thing I ever wanted to be. I said to the man sitting next to me, "Do you see that girl? I would give anything to marry her."
And so began the first steps toward President Eyring's eventual family life, and a rather personal message on the meaning of marriage to the delegates arrayed before him, as President Eyring highlighted the family, a proclamation to the world as outlined by church leaders nearly 20 years ago.
The family is ordained of God. Marriage between man and a woman is essential to his eternal plan. Children are entitled to birth within the bonds of matrimony and to be reared by a father and a mother who honor marital vows with complete fidelity. Happiness in family life is most likely to be achieved when founded upon the teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Along with other religious leaders and scholars, President Eyring arrived in Rome on November 15th to contribute to this international body, accompanied by L. Tom Perry of the 12 and Gerald Causé of the presiding bishopric.
I was very interested to talk with many people from different nations, from all the continents of the earth, and all of them were concerned about the trends that we see.
I want to see a religious revival come out of this, where the pulpits of America and throughout the world are blazing with the benefits of marriage and the value of family units.
It gave us an opportunity to see how much we share with everyone, a feeling of the sanctity of the family.
Pope Francis opened the summit and personally greeted some of the leadership seated directly in front of him. President Eyring and Pope Francis were introduced, and the image of their brief visit was quickly shared through various news outlets around the world.
I think the number of people that were there who believe that families are ordained of God was remarkable, and if you think of the millions of people they could reach, I'm very optimistic.
The contributions made to the 3-day Vatican summit were diverse and memorable.
Marriage still is what it always was, our best chance of happiness down here on earth.
Later in this edition of the World Report, we'll hear more about the dynamic range of their message and their prescription for love at home.
We want to share with you our concerns about the increasing tensions and polarization between advocates of religious freedom on the one hand and advocates of gay rights on the other.
Reaching out to both sides on the same day, members of the 12 and leadership representing the women's auxiliaries and interest of the church, Elder D. Todd Christofferson welcomed members of the press and news media to the conference center January 27th for a special news event. Their mission, to establish a balancing point of our laws as they speak to the free exercise of religious practice and expression, while respecting laws that protect gay and lesbian individuals from discrimination and bigotry, and religious people from the backlash pointed toward them for following their faith. Elder Dallin H. Oakes and Elder Jeffrey R. Holland of the 12 and Sister Neil F. Marriott of the Young Women General Presidency each presented various points of view that the church, the LGBT community, and lawmakers can embrace to assure fairness and inclusion to all.
This nation is engaged in a great debate about marriage, family, individual conscience and collective rights, and the place of religious freedom in our society.
These are very serious issues, and they require serious minds engaged in thoughtful, courteous discourse.
We call on local, state, and the federal government to serve all of their people by passing legislation that protects vital religious freedoms for individuals, families, churches, and other faith groups, while also protecting the rights of our LGBT citizens.
Since that news conference, the Utah State Legislature passed Senate Bill 296 that seeks such a balance and is supported by both sides going forward. For a full hearing of the news conference held by the church, log on to mormonnewsroom.org.
If it's a question of healing,
all the different things she used to say to me came back to my memory.
Or a question of faith,
God is always there for me.
perhaps it's a question of forgiveness.
No matter how dark the times seem, there's always hope.
But it's also a question about the path society is taking. How will faith continue to find a welcome home in a world that's increasingly unwelcome toward religion? In spite of a steady decline in religious affiliation, attendance, and commitment in the United States, there is a profound movement underway, not driven as much by the various and diverse practices among their followers, but by the far-reaching good that is so often accomplished in the world when the faithful, however unlikely the pairing, come together and search out ways to help and heal humanity.
What a day, what a day, what a great day. Great day.
The latest example of this movement is a media-driven website called Faith Counts. Shared stories where the overlapping examples of religion and practice, service to our neighbor, reaching out in peace, and lifting up the downtrodden are shown.
I think faith at its core helps us to recognize the divinity within each of us. Regardless of our different practices or what we call our faiths, we're all seeking kind of the same direction of enlightenment.
Faith Counts takes inspiration from multiple sources of people, especially those in the emerging generation, the so-called millennials, who actually are practicing their religion, including people like abduction and abuse survivor Elizabeth Smart, Olympic athlete Missy Franklin, and a host of others, whose personal stories fly straight to the heart of what it means to believe and live that way, religiously, no matter what religion you happen to call your own.
And it was that faith and that knowledge in God that He would always love me that helped me survive the next 9 months. And it continues to help me survive to this day.
I found total peace. I've never felt anything like that before. Religion wasn't a huge part of my childhood growing up, but faith isn't something that you're born with. It's something that you find.
The site features memes, blogs, and more than a dozen original documentary-style story shareable vignettes already seen by tens of millions, and with many more examples of faith under production. In all, religious groups participating represent over 100 million Americans. The Faith Counts website is astonishing even to those who already felt they were on the right path.
The growth has been really explosive. We have many multi-faith partners from Catholics and Mormons and Seventh-day Adventists and Sikhs and Jewish people, and that we've all come together because we all believe different things theologically and doctrinally, but we all agree on the power of faith.
So faith is much more than attending a house of worship. It's serving our communities and trying to make this world a better place to live in. And so as we see so much chaos, so much hate out there in our world now, faith can certainly make an impact in people's lives and really teach people about compassion, about love, about peace, about grace. That's what faith focus is about.
To see the latest offerings or watch new stories to come, log on to faithcounts.com. Still to come, that movie you've heard so much about is headed for new theaters, right in your own home. Plus, sharing the good word in some unlikely places. That movie, Meet the Mormons, now ranks in the top 40 box office grossing documentaries of all time. And now, it's headed for Act 2. The film is available on iTunes and on DVD and Blu-ray at major retailers, and Netflix will soon be offering the film as well. Meet the Mormons also has a familiar home, like other major church productions, now playing at the Legacy Theater inside the Joseph Smith Memorial Building and at various church-operated visitor centers and historical sites. And most recently, Meet the Mormons has had its international debut in countries like Mexico, New Zealand, Australia, and in the Pacific Islands. And on March 12th, the church donated the net proceeds from its U.S. theatrical box office, $1.8 million, to the American Red Cross during a special event held in Salt Lake City. There are two religious holidays that the entire Christian world marks with joy and reverence, and with a surprising level of unity. And this past Christmas and Easter season have brought to the church an opportunity to share its Christ-centered faith in places many may not have expected. Starting in the heart of New York's Times Square, an outdoor billboard campaign at Christmas time persuaded viewers to remember He is the gift. And the campaign didn't stop there. A short film produced by Mormon.org had more than 34 million views in 20 languages, offering a collage of bustling holiday scenes that give way to the ultimate purpose of it all, remembering the miracle of Jesus' birth.
We hope that there's this broad outreach through digital media and the internet and other remarkable ways that we've never had access to before. But we hope that person by person, the sharing becomes very personal.
And the sheer magnitude of the message blooms across internet media screens again, now that Easter has arrived and the resurrection of Christ remembered. To be inspired, log on to helives.mormon.org.
The Church History Museum has been the ultimate collection site for artifacts that tell the story of our beginning, of our founder and prophet Joseph Smith, and our people from the origins of the church in the early 1820s until this day. The care it provides could be easily described as priceless itself. From the death masks of Joseph and his brother Hiram when their lives were taken in the early days of the church, to the artifacts that chronicle pioneer movements to the Mountain West and the building of Utah's first temples. But for a 30-year-old building that has staged more than 100 different exhibits and hosted more than 7 million visitors, it's time for the Caregiving Museum to receive some special care too. Last fall, the Church History Museum closed its doors for what will be a year-long renovation of improvements to take on a new era of interactive displays and historical depictions.
We will focus on the history of the church in this exhibit during the time of the life of the prophet Joseph Smith during the early years of the Restoration.
The exhibit is basically made up of 8 different sections, ranging from religious awakenings in the United States and then moving all the way through the Nauvoo period.
The museum's new exhibit will reopen this fall. To learn more about or plan for a visit, log on to history.lds.org/museum. For Latter-day Saints living in or visiting North America, there are many historical sites of the church apart from Utah, in the Midwest and Northeast. Add to that the special designation of Susquehanna County in Pennsylvania.
I can tell you that this site is every bit as pristine and beautiful and has a spirit about it as the Sacred Grove.
In late September, print and broadcast journalists were invited to the motion picture studio of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Provo, Utah, to hear about the church's plans to fully develop church historic property in Pennsylvania's Susquehanna County, a site known by Latter-day Saints where church founder Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon and received the priesthood during the restoration of the church in the early 1800s.
To Latter-day Saints, this is as foundational as any site we have.
A short film depicting the events of those days is also being produced for viewing at the Historic Sites Visitor Center.
Particularly now in the age of the internet, the age of television and movies, we come to appreciate that children especially and families come away from historic sites better understanding and remembering what they see on a film screen or what they see in multimedia exhibits.
Renovation work continues at the historic properties in Oakland Township, Pennsylvania, and will include a replica of the cabin where Joseph and Emma lived in the early days of the church. Completion of the Susquehanna site is anticipated in the early fall of this year. Up next, we'll show you how family history research is creating a wow factor in the hands of young people. And seen and remembered by millions, cared for by just a comparative few, their happy labor rewarded. Get ready for a lively approach to living family history. On February 11th, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints opened the Family Search Discovery Center inside the Joseph Smith Memorial Building, featuring interactive displays and hands-on activities.
We went to the drawing board and tried to create a discovery-type experience for youth and for the entire family so that everyone would feel welcome and everyone could come experience their family history.
With iPads in hand, visitors can go through a number of stations to learn more about themselves, their family, sample the culture of the past, and even record new information for their ever-growing family tree. Interactive tours are free. To come and see what the Discovery Center has to offer, log on to familysearch.org/Discovery Center.
Genealogy. Are you doing it? Everybody is doing it. All you got to do is right click, left click.
Blogger, author, and family history enthusiast Tamu Smith is seizing the moment. Genealogy has never been easier to access, and the interest just keeps growing. More than 21,000 people descended on the Salt Lake City Convention Center to attend Rootstech in mid-February, the largest family history conference of its kind in the world, hosted by Family Search.
The greatest growth in family history is with the young people because they're very technologically comfortable, and that's where the action is today.
Now in its 5th year, attendance figures have seen an additional 8,000 people coming to Rootstech. They've come to see what's driving the escalating interest in family history. From new forms of DNA research and social media applications to filling out your family tree and the power of personal stories that express the unique characteristics of every family.
As technology helps us to connect with each other at a social level, I think that makes us more inclined to want to search out our roots.
The thousands who attended Rootstech were also treated to special keynote speakers throughout the conference, including former First Lady Laura Bush and her daughter, TV network correspondent Jenna Bush Hager. Best-selling author A.J. Jacobs writes about the few degrees that separate nearly perfect strangers, and recording artist Donny Osmond says family history connects best when you remember all you've been through and write it down.
One thing that my wife and I have determined that our 5 boys and their children, those little stories, how insignificant they may seem to them or inspiring to them, they become sources of strength for their posterity.
In the mid-Atlantic region of Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, tens of thousands of Latter-day Saint volunteers and their friends are pushing up their sleeves for the annual D.C. Day of Service.
A morning well spent serving a very deserving community.
There are dozens of goodwill relationships being formed in this multi-state effort, ranging from public space cleanups to community pantry stock-ups, and among them, the 400-strong students and college athletes at George Mason University, who arrived at a Latter-day Saint meeting house in Fairfax County to gather and provide food for children who don't always have enough to eat over the weekend stretch.
These power packs are food that goes in kids' backpacks on Friday afternoon and then provides them with the sustenance that they need over the weekend. Many of these kids are coming from families who work 2 or 3 jobs, and mom and dad aren't home on the weekends.
Now in its 3rd year, and with a full month of volunteer aid activities under its belt, and dedicated to the D.C. Area Day of Service, the participating faith groups are many. Some 50,000 people from the Lutheran Church, Roman Catholic faith, Baptists, and Latter-day Saints, all commencing on September 11th to the end of the month. The voice of history can be so much easier to hear when the hands of time are held back to a degree by the diligent work of preservation. And like the sailors who once served aboard the USS Missouri and cared for her before her return to Pearl Harbor from the war in the Pacific, missionaries in Hawaii have been polishing, sweeping, and sanding and maintaining this storied ship for more than a decade.
Not very many people get to come serve at a place like this. And it's really cool to see all the history and to be able to help preserve that.
Show you a little bit of a room.
In honor of this ongoing service by the church and its missionaries, the USS Missouri Memorial Association presented a special plaque made from the Missouri's very own teakwood deck and presented it to Elder Daniel L. Johnson of the 70 and Stephen R. Warner, the Honolulu mission president, on behalf of Church President Thomas S. Monson, who served in the United States Navy himself. And as for Mission President Stephen Warner, memories of courageous military service have a place of their own in his family.
My father served in World War II as a fighter pilot on an aircraft carrier, and he would often tell me of his experiences. And so to be actually on a Navy ship, it brings back fond memories of my father's stories of his service during World War II.
I love coming to the USS Missouri because it's almost as if I'm a part of the history, and especially when we are able to clean the ship so that other people that come from all over the world can enjoy it.
All right? You okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Church missionaries and local members have given 27,000 hours of service since they began volunteering 15 years ago. Since then, the steady stream of missionaries have come to work every Wednesday. History buffs know the USS Missouri as the ship where hostilities were brought to a close, with treaties signed on board between the Allied forces and Japan. The moment so many have been waiting for has finally arrived. And when it comes to temple building, there are a lot of arrivals coming. When it comes to our temples, we love the announcements.
To become the second temple of the church in the city of Provo.
And we're inspired by their completion.
I want a little girl to come and do it. This girl right here.
And just around the corner, there are several new temples up and down the Western Hemisphere that are, as of production time, about to be dedicated in the weeks and months to come this year. We begin in Latin America and to the Cordoba, Argentina temple. This temple broke ground in October of 2010 and will be dedicated this coming May 17th. Located in the northwestern portion of the city, the Cordoba, Argentina temple will be the country's second temple, alongside Buenos Aires. Moving north to the Rockies, the Payson, Utah temple will be dedicated June 7th. This temple in Payson will serve the growing region of what was once a large rural community south of Provo. Back to Latin America and to the Trujillo, Peru temple north of the country's capital city of Lima. The temple site broke ground in September of 2011 and will be dedicated June 21st. Latter-day Saints in Trujillo and other areas of Peru had previously traveled for a whole day's drive to attend the temple in Lima, Peru's first temple. Now, returning to the north and to the heartland of the United States, the often blue skyline of Indiana's expansive rural setting is now colored with a hint of gold. The statue of the Angel Moroni, layered in gold leaf, is a familiar sight for temple-going Mormons and a special milestone of temple construction here in the upper Midwest. Located in the suburb of Carmel, just north of Indianapolis, the temple will hold a free public open house for tours beginning July 17th and running through August 8th. Its formal dedication will be held August 23rd.
In the American Southwest, an oasis of faith lights the way for the dedication of the 144th temple of the church in Phoenix, Arizona. On Sunday, November 16th, President Thomas S. Monson, President Dieter F. Uchtdorf of the First Presidency, Elder Dallin H. Oaks of the 12, and Elder Kent F. Richards of the 70 joined other church leaders in welcoming families who came to witness the cornerstone ceremony, a tradition that symbolizes the temple's completion.
It brings to mind the Savior, Jesus Christ, being the chief cornerstone. in our church. And we always think back to the Savior as being the purpose and the reason we do temples.
You gonna go on missions, boys?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, what's your name?
Brayton?
And yours?
Right.
What's the other boy's name? My name's Tom.
Brother and sister names.
Yeah.
Minutes after the ceremony, President Monson returned to the temple's interior for the first of 3 dedication ceremonies, which were witnessed by many more in person and through a special satellite broadcast in Arizona. As you can imagine, the temple's completion and dedication comes with a level of joy you just can't measure, but is always embraced, especially by Latter-day Saint youth. And in this case, an outdoor music and dance performance called Be the Light.
You're 4,300 young people. Oh, you have such a radiance of goodness.
President Monson watched over them all and gave his trademark thumbs up to all the youth performance who could hardly believe what was happening.
Performing for the prophet is the most amazing feeling that I think any human could ever feel. Knowing that he's watching what we've worked so hard to perform is just spectacular. And it wasn't really worrisome knowing he was watching, it was more comforting.
If the image you see makes you think you're watching a low-altitude flyover, then we're on the right course. The Washington, D.C. temple has a twin, so to speak, in miniature, a detail-oriented scale model on display on the grounds visitor center, with the eastern temple wall and approaching annex removed to reveal the temple's interior.
That's where the little chandeliers are.
On the day of its unveiling, January 10th, Henry B. Eyring of the First Presidency came to see the result, greet the special guests, many who represent the interfaith community, and share his insight to the purpose of temples in the faith-filled practices of Latter-day Saints.
This model is remarkable in the sense that it catches the beauty and I think the feeling of reverence to talk about the plan of salvation in a way that you couldn't without the model.
Guests to the Visitors Center will see a replica of the temple inside, the celestial room, the baptismal font, the sealing room, and other portions of the Washington, D.C. temple. This allows visitors to become acquainted with the interior of a building that has been a landmark in the city since its original dedication in 1974.
This really is the house of the Lord. And if they can come, and not just to see the model, but also the other exhibits that are here, and to see the temple itself, it is a message itself.
Straight ahead, religious freedom has many voices, but few are as passionate as the words from an apostle, reaching out to the next generation. Ever anxious to help members of the church stay connected to the direction of their faith, the church is reaching out to Latter-day Saints wherever they reside through a special newsletter. The electronic correspondence will be sent monthly to email addresses of millions throughout the world in 10 different languages. The newsletter had its first test run in early December, centering on the message of the First Presidency's Christmas devotional. Other themes, both spiritual and temporal in nature, will follow. Email addresses listed on a member's LDS account will receive the Inspiration and News newsletter. To register for an account, log on to ldsaccount.lds.org. A warm welcome for Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, who came to Chapman University February 26th, marking the 10-year anniversary of the Fish Interfaith Center on that campus, a student outreach he assisted a decade ago, and now returning to Chapman to urge the interfaith audience to stand against forces that would deny them from expressing their faith-influenced voice of conscience.
To counter these trends, every citizen should insist on his or her constitutional right to exercise one's beliefs and to voice one's conscience on issues not only in the privacy of the home or the sanctity of the pulpit, but also in the public square, in the ballot box, and in the halls of justice.
When time flies fast, some people describe it as a New York minute. It was 50 years ago when the church suddenly found itself handling a rare and fleeting opportunity to build a pavilion and present its faith to some 5 million visitors attending the World's Fair in New York in 1964. And like that New York Minute, the church had to move fast to be part of a New York moment when all eyes were on the city hosting the World's Fair. The anniversary commemorating the event was held last October in New York. L. Tom Perry of the 12 recalled those urgent days to quickly develop and prepare the Mormon Pavilion.
I would leave work, ride the subway out to the fair, be there until 10 o'clock at night, then have to ride the subway in, catch the New York Central out to where I lived, and next morning get up and go to work. So the worst part of it was I'd fall asleep, end up in White Plains, and have to wait a half hour to catch the train back to where I lived.
At the time, Elder Perry was living and serving the church in nearby Scarsdale, New York, and lent his leadership as time would allow to coordinate the message and visual experience of the church and the screening of the film Man's Search for Happiness, a landmark film produced by the church to explain its beliefs and purpose of life.
Where did I come from?
More than 5 million people visited the Mormon Pavilion during the World's Fair, prompting some visitors to join the church. Elder Perry was able to reunite with a few of these people during last fall's 50th anniversary held in New York.
Humanitarian and family considerations brought church leaders to Latin America. Sister Linda K. Burton, General President of the Relief Society, and Sister Neil F. Marriott of the Young Women General Presidency met with First Lady of Uruguay, Mrs. Maria Auxiliadora Delgado de Vasquez, and a host of others as they made additional stops in Argentina, Paraguay, and Chile. The 10-day tour in mid-February centered on the well-being of children and the welfare of families. It's easier to know where you're going when you understand where you came from. Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron has that advantage even more these days after being presented with his family history, which dated back more than 6 generations. He was given the special personalized documents prepared by local leaders of the church in the UK when Britain's Parliament was in session February 4th. Higher education will soon have a new leader, and BYU Idaho will soon have a new president. Clark G. Gilbert, CEO of Deseret News and Deseret Digital Media, becomes the next president of BYU Idaho, replacing President Kim B. Clark, who has served the university for a decade. Elder Russell M. Nelson of the 12 made the announcement of the church-owned university. Gilbert will take the reins of leadership this April and take the oath of that leadership office this fall. The appointment of Clark G. Gilbert makes him the 16th president of BYU Idaho. The Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah will undergo a transformation this summer with construction of several new buildings for classroom and training space. In 2 years' time, the Provo MTC will add 700 missionaries with improved underground parking, enhanced landscaping, and buildings utilizing more glass and natural sunlight and openness. The church operates 15 missionary training centers around the world where Mormon missionaries learn the finer points of the restored gospel and the language and culture of the countries where they will serve. When we come back, the delight of children everywhere lights up Christmas, and the children of South Africa have something to sing to the rest of the world. What would the holidays be like without the unique characters we've come to love to help tell the story of Christmas? Hard to imagine. And hard not to smile and laugh at this last Christmas concert with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and Orchestra at Temple Square.
Don't worry that it's not good enough for anyone else to hear.
Not just at the return of Broadway star Santino Fontana, but the incomparable Sesame Street characters who answered the call.
Ernie, Bert, are you there? Oh, we sure are, Grover. And we've got everything in place for the big entrance of Fontino Santana.
Ernie, that's Santino Fontana.
Right, Bert, that's what I said. Santana Bobana.
Santino Fontana.
Banana banana?
Ernie.
And brought all their friends, large and small, to put on the traditional family show that managed to bring in the children of the audience, closer than they've ever been. And even brought the kid out in Santino Fontana himself.
It's very surreal to be in a scene with, to be talking to them and having them react to me, because I kind of want to watch the show. I want to see what it's, I want to watch it.
And let the whole world know it. Everyone who likes giving gifts say aye.
At Sesame, we always are proud of sort of this high bar we have towards excellence, and to work with another organization that has an even higher bar than we do has been a joy and a privilege.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what else can I count?
Well, welcome to all of you and Merry Christmas.
Oh,
Merry Christmas. We've had this dream of being able to invite the wonderful Sesame Street workshop, and after, I think, several years of dreaming about that, to have it actually happening is a dream come true for us.
There are few images that inspire hope more than the sight and sound of children singing. It all happened in Pretoria, South Africa, where approximately 100 Latter-day Saint girls and boys, dressed in their Sunday best, led a parade of 10,000 and sang on stage in honor and memory of Nelson Mandela, the nation's late leader and renowned champion for human rights. Singing songs like Come, Come Ye Saints as they walked to Mandela's welcoming statue at the nation's capital, the primary-age children later gathered on stage to sing Teach Me to Walk in the Light and other Latter-day Saint songs while embracing a painting of Christ and holding flags of their country. The Nelson Mandela Memory Walk marks the first anniversary of his passing and upholds the far-reaching impact of Mandela's leadership and movement to end segregation and oppression in his country.
Straight ahead, his skills in the kitchen have taken him around the world. Now that he's settled down, he's got something he wants to send out with missionaries before they go. Plus, Marriage has a whole new team of veteran advisors joining together with a unified message in part 2 of the Vatican Summit.
How's your prime ribs?
Awesome.
Stop by this place when you're hungry one night and make the grand discovery of refined international cuisine.
We have the technology to do you a slice of prime rib and a salmon.
But be prepared for a highly skilled chef who's just as comfortable making the rounds and advising his guests on the dish of the evening.
That's what happens when you don't obey.
As he is stoking the fire in the kitchen.
Food is part of fellowship. Almost everything we do in this world starts with a meal.
Born in Vietnam to a Buddhist mother and raised in part by his Catholic stepfather, Hy Fitzgerald is a fast-walking study of East meets West. Now, by the way, his name is pronounced the same as the greeting, as in, "Hi, can I have a table for two?"
Yes, you can.
I am doing the one part that has been bestowed upon me.
From his earliest days, Hy's love of the sea and natural environments forever influenced how he runs his restaurant with the strong sense of community he knew from his village childhood, which later drew him to church membership after he settled in the United States.
I spent a lot of time with the missionary, and after I joined the church, I wanted to see if I can help the missionary.
His youthful family all participate operating time and seasons, following Hy's lead, which brings us to his latest venture. Hy is launching a cooking class for prospective missionaries, sisters and elders who are ready to serve, but may not be altogether ready to serve themselves at the dinner table.
They forget because they're so busy. They do so much planning on who they meet, but they don't do what they need to eat until they're hungry.
A classically trained chef with an uncanny understanding for the use of aromatic spices, protein needs, and complex nutrition.
See how that goes?
He's simplifying a missionary training class that simplifies it all.
I wanted them to have one pan that they can do anything with, from soup to sauce to lasagna to burgers to everything with it.
And there's one more thing after equipping missionaries with energy for the work ahead. Wherever they go in the world, get ready for this universal truth.
People always want to share food. By learning from the native, you become friends and you can become culturally comfortable wherever you are, so that you can relate to them, they can relate to you, so that you can share the gospel.
It's a process, to be sure, and Hai says he'll be happy to correspond to any follow-up mealtime questions from missionaries he's trained once they're in the field. Until then, Hai and his family will just keep cooking with a smile. What are they saying to you?
They say don't do it.
Then don't do it if you're fearful of it. Definitely don't sign up for that.
There's nothing like the topic of marriage to get people talking these days.
I marry him because I love him.
It's just a question of when, which day.
And here at the Vatican Summit, being held just beyond the view of the people we spoke with, some of the most outspoken supporters of marriage in the world of faith and academics gathered to remind the rest of us just how important marriage is, and at a time when present social changes appear to challenge its very meaning and purpose.
We've learned the hard way that the thriving of societies depends on a healthy, flourishing marriage culture. The family is irreplaceable.
As we shared with you earlier in this edition of the World Report, Henry B. Eyring of the First Presidency delivered a powerful, personally driven message at the summit about the nature of marriage and family. And his words were joined by a host of others, ready to take a stand for traditional marriage, as it critically connects men and women, not only in spiritual ways, but in the very health of communities all over the world.
We send the message to our young people and to those who are concerned about the poor and the disadvantaged, that the family is the source of healing and the source of justice and the source of the future. Marriage is essential to benefiting children, and that marriage is between equals.
But we're not teaching them in schools, they're not being conveyed by the media. So now I think it is actually the religious groups who, strangely enough, have become the great experts and champions of marriage.
But there are people who believe in the beauty of marriage, the power, the family, the life. But the testimony we got at this conference is of how rich that is, how love grows over time, and I'm sure we're going to see more of that, that it's worth it. It's really worth it.
The Vatican Summit, with the blessing and participation of Pope Francis, drew in some 300 special guests and speakers, and also premiered several documentaries that channeled its global interfaith message, altogether leaving senior Latter-day Saint leader Henry B. Eyring and others profoundly hopeful.
Families can be forever. That's the optimism that I came away with, and that's what's universal. Across the continents, a desire to somehow perpetuate families forever. I don't think many people believe that it's possible, but we do.
Here we are in the Vatican, in Rome, coming together across all the faiths and converging from our very different starting points on saying we believe that love and marriage have a place in the 21st century and that we can heal what others harm.
Marriage is the foundation on which all else is built. If you try to build a house without a firm foundation, it might look like a very pretty house for a while, but eventually the winds will blow and the walls will come tumbling down. It's better to have that foundation in place so that when the winds blow, the house can weather the storm.
This has been the World Report of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, April 2015. To watch the World Report online, log on to mormonnewsroom.org.